You feel good about your workplace. You feel you're treated like a reasonable person at your workplace, and you feel your input is valued, you're going to do a better job.
And sometimes managers don't see the problems that the worker has because they're not down there.
We find that our workforce is more productive when they are part of the process.
We've made a real effort to talk to one another and not just sit down in a room and yell and scream at each other, but to understand what the other person is trying to say.
Basically, when we're happy about our jobs and happy with what we're doing, we're going to be twice as productive.
Competitiveness, productivity, customer satisfaction. Over the past decade, we have heard these words again and again as America has fought to maintain its position in a worldwide economy. It's a story we know all too well. But these concepts, productivity, customer satisfaction, and more lately, labor management cooperation and employee involvement, have taken on new meaning. Not just in corporate boardrooms or faraway international markets, but in our own backyards, in communities, large and small, where men and women in state and local government are creating a new definition of public service. Ever since the first settlers to our country gathered together in town meetings, government has shaped the quality of life in our communities. Today, in places much like this, the tradition carries on. From city council chambers to state capitals, it is here where communities grapple with finding a balance between available resources and demand for services, fire and police protection, road maintenance, health and human services, education, the basic building blocks for a strong America. Yet, government is not insulated from the winds of economic change. It, too, faces the challenge to streamline operations, to deliver quality services at a reasonable cost. This is a story, 4 stories actually, of how a city, a county, a school district, and a state, together with their labor unions and employees, have made tough decisions that are changing the way state and local governments are doing business. First, we'll go to the Pacific Northwest, to Jackson County, Oregon. Here, rich natural resources, once a guarantee for economic prosperity, define the community's economic life, and that life revolves around timber. Traditionally, most county roads go from farm to market. But here in Jackson County, Oregon, the farm is the forest, and the market is the mill. Heavily dependent on the timber industry, the county relies on receipts from timber cut on federal lands for nearly 1/3 of its revenues. How much the county receives is tied in part to the price that timber goes for at the mill. And that price is influenced by the condition of the roads. No one knows that better than Joe Strahl, Department of Public Works Director.
And while people kind of disagree sometimes as to how much timber ought to be cut, hardly anybody disagrees that we ought to receive as much revenue as possible from that cutting. By having a better road system, loggers are able to move their logs to the mill quicker and reduce their costs.
The economic recession in the early 1980s hit Jackson County hard. The bottom dropped out of the housing market, crippling the timber industry. Jackson County government lost 60% of its revenues and had to cut over 50% of its employees. Burke Raymond, county administrator.
This had a dramatic effect on services. The sheriff's patrol, for instance, was reduced from 53 officers to 7, and this means 7 officers to patrol 3,000 square miles.
In the Department of Public Works, responsible for road maintenance, half the employees were laid off, and numerous projects turned over to private contractors.
I think we realized right then and there we're going to have to make some improvements.
A single, fully loaded logging truck pounds the road surface with the same impact as 9,500 automobiles. Road safety and maintenance is a tough and demanding job. With a diminished workforce and further cutbacks looming, both management and the union realized that neither could solve the problem alone. Together, they turned to the frontline workers. Their mission? Find ways to become cost competitive and at the same time maintain quality in road maintenance.
Just make a recommendation to them that this is something that's going to have to be considered real strong.
Basically what we did was start brainstorming. We start seeing anything that could be done to improve working conditions or make things more efficient.
Mechanical road patching, a highly labor-intensive operation, was the committee's first target. Department of Public Works Manager Jerry Douglas.
At that point I was a little bit nervous because I wasn't completely sure that it was a problem that was solvable.
Despite management's doubts, the committee proceeded.
I think the big surprise to me was not only did they spend their hour on county time out here, but these guys were spending an hour on their own time at home. Some of them more time than that, doing graphs and preparing reports.
What they came up with was a modification to a piece of equipment that had been lying around unused for several years.
The costs that have come in since they began utilizing that spreader has borne out the fact that they were right in their analysis.
In fact, improved productivity led to real savings, thousands of dollars annually. But more importantly, it proved what could be accomplished by working together. Now, similar cooperative programs are operating throughout the county. Today, Jackson County is back on its feet, but concerns about cost and the pressure to turn over projects to private industry are greater than ever.
And if we can't prove that we're the best provider of the service in terms of the cost effectiveness and the service effectiveness, then someone who can do it better ought to be hired to do it.
I've always wanted to be able to tap the resources that are inherent in the abilities of the people that are out there performing the work. I think we finally hit on a process that does that.
That process, labor management cooperation, has given the Department of Public Works the ability to compete, and it's paid off for taxpayers. County Commissioner Jeff Golden.
Some people are a little suspicious of these new modes of cooperation, that kind of warm and fuzzy and abstract. You can't be proud of other people's work. You can only be proud of your own work on a sustained basis. And I'm really convinced that that's a very smart way to get the most value out of the tax dollar.